Good morning, everyone. We'll get started shortly. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren, and welcome to our Missouri Rapid DNA webinar hosted by GTH DNA and our Rapid DNA learning platform, Go Rapid DNA. We are very excited to be holding today's webinar in coordination with the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Crime Laboratory. And we have 6 speakers lined up to discuss Rapid DNA and the operations and value of the Missouri State Highway Patrol's new Rapid DNA program, which is now accessible to all local law enforcement agencies in Missouri. The format for today's webinar is that we will hear from our 6 speakers and then have about 15 minutes to address questions from the audience before the webinar ends, no later than 11:30. And you can submit a question at any time during the webinar, and we will do our best to address your questions. And if we don't have time to address your question during the webinar, we will work with the speakers panel to follow up with your question later this week. And to submit a question, please post it in the Q&A box, not the chat box. And your questions will be sent directly to the panel and will not be visible to the attendees. And for those of you that are authorized to receive continuing education credits for today's event, GTH DNA will be offering attendance certificates. So if you would like a certificate, please email me your request. Please enjoy today's event. We will now hear from Chris Asplin. Chris is currently the Executive Director for the National Criminal Justice Association. Prior to starting his role in 2016, Chris held various DNA-related positions, which most notably included serving as an Assistant U.S. Attorney, where he was appointed by Attorney General Janet Reno as the Executive Director of the National Commission on the Future of DNA Evidence. In this role, Chris worked to develop the policies and funding which contributed to the success forensic DNA experienced today in the United States. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you to GTH for the opportunity to be here today. I really look forward to spending some time talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is really maximizing the potential of DNA technology. And that is certainly what you folks are doing in Missouri. Before I get to the slide presentation, I think that my role here is to provide a little bit of context for what you folks are doing in Missouri and what it means almost historically, if you will. A little more background on my part. I was a district attorney. That's how I started my career, and I started out prosecuting child abuse and sex crimes for about 6 years. Then I worked for the National DA's Association running their DNA unit. And then, as Lauren mentioned, I ran the National Commission on the Future of DNA Evidence for the Department of Justice, originally under Ms. Reno and then under Attorney General Ashcroft. That commission was really designed, as I said, to maximize the potential of DNA. This was a long time ago for any of you who remember Ms. Reno or Attorney General Ashcroft. It was a while ago, but it was in the beginning days when we began to understand that DNA wasn't just going to be a better piece of evidence. What it was going to do was it was going to really revolutionize the way we actually investigated cases. And that came with the advent of databasing. Eventually, the DNA itself, the DNA technology, the analysis was less the issue from a crime fighting standpoint, from an investigative standpoint. then the connectivity of databases, that really became the most important aspect of what we were talking about. Now, the commission looked at a number of different areas and we created work groups. We looked at the basic science and technology and what that might look like in the future. We looked at some of the legal issues surrounding DNA at the time. For example, admissibility issues, who we could include in the database, privacy concerns, et cetera. So we looked at those separately. We looked at laboratory funding. Realize, and I'm sure that you all do, that when DNA hit the scene, and we all began to understand what the possibilities were with this new technology, it was in a context wherein our laboratory system wasn't created, our infrastructure wasn't created for that kind of technology, right? We didn't need clean rooms for fingerprinting and all those other things. And so, along with the benefits of technology came a need to approach our laboratory infrastructure in a new, more financially supported way, let's say. So we looked at that issue as well. How much is this going to cost us to maximize the crime fighting potential of DNA? We also looked very specifically at the post conviction analysis exoneration potential of DNA, which, 20, 25 years ago was kind of a harder thing to do. Again, my background was all as a prosecutor. And it was in those beginning days, it was quite frankly hard to get prosecutors and a lot of law enforcement agencies heads around the idea that DNA made exonerations a little different, right? This wasn't your kind of whining and complaining about the fact that the guy had a bad defense attorney or that, some alibi changed, all those we had some guy in prison who now had something that he'd like to say. No, DNA made post-conviction exoneration very different. It meant that we could, in the right cases, determine actual innocence. Now, that wasn't every case where we had DNA, right? As we all understand. And unfortunately, that was the way that some folks would publicize it, right? It was easy for defense attorneys to go, well, there's DNA in the case. Why don't we test it? It needed to be a much more thoughtful approach, and we needed to test those cases wherein, if we did the testing, it would be exonerative, not just maybe slightly probative. But we looked very clearly at that. The other thing we looked at was law enforcement implementation and specifically law enforcement training. When folks ask me what the impact of the O.J. Simpson case was, um, oftentimes what I tell them is the biggest impact was on law enforcement in this regard. Nobody, no law enforcement agency in the country wanted to be that agency, right? No law enforcement agency wanted to be in a situation where they weren't doing everything exactly right at the identification, collection, and preservation of the evidence stage, so that the ultimate prosecution didn't come back on their failure, right? And we hadn't done a good job of training law enforcement. The labs had, the labs were moving along at lightning speed, and what we weren't doing was we were not helping law enforcement get up to speed as well for everything that they needed to do. And then when the technology changed from RFLP technology, where you needed you needed a blood stain about as big as a quarter, to PCR technology, to the point now where we can get a DNA profile from evidence we can't even see, right? That put even more pressure and responsibility on law enforcement to get it right at the crime scene. So those were the things that we looked at. And also, we looked at science and technology. Now, the reason I went through all of that, we had really smart people on that commission. We had a Chief Justice of a state Supreme Court. We had Nobel Prize winners, Josh Letterman. We had the former head of the CIA, Webster, the CIA and the FBI, William Webster was on the commission. We had the head of the ICP, pretty bright guy, head of National Sheriff's Association. We had a lot of really thoughtful people on this commission. And I can tell you that the commission that was tasked for looking at the future and identifying how we could maximize the potential didn't see this coming. for as much as we spent 4 years looking at the future, here's what we didn't see. We didn't see DNA technology, number one, being this rapid this soon, right? 60 minutes, 90 minutes for a result. Nobody anticipated that in less than 20 years, and that's what it's been. Nobody anticipated the idea of DNA analysis actually moving from strictly a laboratory setting to a law enforcement setting and moving that opportunity from the lab to law enforcement. Wasn't anything we talked about 20 years ago. We also didn't see the use of genealogy databases. Never, because I tell you, if we had, we'd had a lot to say about that and the privacy restrictions around that and everything else. Never saw that coming. So I give all of that kind of preface to really kind of complement what you folks are doing in Missouri. To say that your utilization of DNA and how you're doing it, and not just in the rapid context, not just that you're doing rapid, but how you're leveraging the power of the databases, and getting around the restrictions that exist right now, is really, for lack of a better phrase, cutting edge, and I really want to make sure that we appreciate that. It kind of harkens back to one of the great lab directors in the history of DNA, Paul Ferrara, who originally, when the FBI set out its database, wouldn't allow arrestee testing, and he said, "You know what? DNA testing is more important for my state than it is for you nationally, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this anyway in our state, even if the FBI won't allow us to." Let me be clear. One of the reasons that DNA is so effective right now is because of the slow, methodical approach that the FBI takes. Now, it drives some of us crazy. It drives law enforcement crazy sometimes. And law enforcement is willing to move at a quicker pace. I should say local law enforcement. I don't mean to suggest FBI isn't, but local law enforcement is willing to move more quickly. And certainly private industry is willing to move at a breakneck speed. But that conflict has been a very good thing. It's meant that we have proceeded at a pace which allows us to go step by step, but never step by step and then taking a step backwards because we've made a mistake. And that's really, really important. So the FBI sometimes, in not allowing us to use databases, not allowing us to integrate things, at least now, while they work towards that, not approving certain things at a speed we'd like sometimes, has really, really benefited our ultimate use. So with all of that being said, let me give you an idea of kind of where the rest of the country is. And now I'll kind of go to the slides for just a minute. Here you see rapid DNA expansion. And as you see, the green there represents those areas in which rapid is deployed by the lab only in a laboratory context. The yellow is rapid deployed by non-lab local law enforcement only. And then the blue is rapid deployed by both lab and non-lab local law enforcement. And so they've got these great partnerships worked out. And then we have a few unfortunate spaces. I live in Maine. I'm up there in a white space where there's no rapid yet at all, but I say only yet. And so it really is. It is a movement that is moving quickly, but that's kind of where we are on the national stage. Lauren, could you move to the next slide? Don't think I can. Oh, thank you. So from a system standpoint, right now we're looking at where are the rapid DNA statewide systems, and that's different, obviously, than just where are we implementing it on a locality basis. But systems there in green, you've got rapid booking stations. There in the striped green, you've got rapid booking stations that are currently under development. In blue, you've got rapid where they're actually using it for investigative leads. And my guess is some of the speakers will talk about the difference between just using it at a booking station as contrasted with a more advanced use, we'll call it advanced, which is the investigative lead, and then The striped blue is where they're using it, where they're developing the potential for rapid investigative leads. I want to give a shout out to Pennsylvania. A lot of that's being done in my old home county, where I was a DA a long time ago. They're really on the cutting edge there. Next slide, please. Okay. Congressional support for rapid has been really significant, I think. And I'll give a shout out to GTH for that. They really do a great job of making sure that Congress is informed on the potential, the value of DNA, and how many lives are being saved by maximizing the potential of the technology. You can see the legend up there, the light blue FY22 awarded, and then FY23 in pink, where funds have been awarded there, FY24 in the green, and then FY25, the final bill is pending for that, but for those locations. And you can see how the support is really expanding, right? There are more darker blue dots than there are light blue dots. And that's really good. And I think that will only increase as Congress and other funding agencies recognize the value, the life-saving value of rapid DNA testing as it is connected ultimately to the databases. And Lauren, final slide, please. The FBI support for rapid DNA is also there too. The standards for rapid DNA booking station searches were published in 2022. The first booking station went live, I'm sorry, in 2020, the first booking station went live in 2022 by our friends in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. Currently, evidence processed with rapid DNA may not be searched in CODIS. The FBI standards for evidence searches of CODIS are on track for publication, January 2025, but 90% of matches are made on the state level. And that's really an important point. And I'll close with this observation that may be pointing out the obvious, but it's always important to do so. CODIS in the context of NDES, right, nationally, it's really valuable. And that's the way that CODIS started. That's the way that the whole program started, was a belief in the value of that, and that was its selling point. But what every law enforcement officer understands, and what you folks clearly understand in Missouri, is that bad guys, they don't commit a burglary in one neighborhood, hop on a plane and fly to California, right? Most crime is on the state level. Most crime is on the local level. And so the value to taking this rapid instrumentation and applying it in the context of your local and your state databases, however you can make that happen, and you're doing it really innovatively in Missouri, that's the way that we maximize the potential of DNA. And ultimately, that's the way we save the most lives. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I hope that was a little helpful to kind of kick off the rest of the discussion. And again, thanks to the folks at GTH for the invitation.
Thank you, Chris. Our second speaker today is Brian Hoey, the director of the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Laboratory. Brian has served in the Missouri Crime Lab system for 31 years, and before being appointed director in 2018, Brian was a DNA analyst, DNA technical leader, and held various crime lab management positions. Brian will be kicking off today's discussion on the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Rapid DNA program. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning, and I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you to GTH for putting on this webinar, and thank you to all the speakers who've been so gracious with their time. There's no doubt that our crime laboratory, as well as crime labs across the country, suffer from backlogs. Well, there are many reasons for backlogs. The fact is that the demand on crime labs often precludes us from providing forensic intelligence. By forensic intelligence, I mean real-time forensic science that can assist in ongoing investigations. 2 weeks ago, on September 16th, the 2017 GMC truck was stolen. Late in the morning of the next day, September 17th, one of our Highway Patrol criminal investigators recovered the truck. Inside the truck was a receipt from a nearby fueling station with the dates and timestamp during the time the truck was stolen. Sitting in the drink holder was a bottle of Sprite. The investigator went to the gas station, pulled the surveillance video, and got some good stills of the suspect. He then astutely swabbed the mouth of the Sprite bottle and submitted one of the samples to one of our rapid DNA instruments. Not only did we get a full profile, we got a match to an offender. Together with the surveillance video photos, the investigator was able to know who his subject was in real time. That is forensic intelligence. By our submission policy, the sample from the Sprite bottle would likely have not even have ever come into the laboratory. However, had it would have been given a low priority behind all the sexual assaults, homicides, assaults, and other types of evidence we have, and possibly would have spent over a year in our backlog, obviously enabling that subject more time to offend. Using rapid DNA, the case was resolved in 2 days, and there was no additional demand placed on the crime lab, increasing our backlog. But more importantly, the Missouri citizen whose car was stolen had almost immediate closure. Our vision of our rapid DNA program boils down to 2 goals: provide law enforcement with a tool to give them real-time forensic intelligence, and reduce the demand on our crime laboratory so we in turn can improve our turnaround times and assist law enforcement in real time. Whether the rapid DNA analysis provides a match like the Sprite bottle example I just gave, or the rapid DNA analysis provides a negative result, either result is an answer that gives investigators valuable information that can help steer an investigation early in its inception. Although we never want a negative result, I would posit that it would be better to know at the beginning of an investigation rather than get that result a year later. Research has calculated societal cost of sexual assault to be approximately $450,000, armed robbery at $335,000, aggravated assault at $145,000, and burglary at around $41,000. The longer offenders continue to offend, the greater the cost to society. If the subject who stole the GMC truck had not been apprehended, how much more damage could he have done, and at what cost? The faster we can react to crime, the better off we all will be. And the faster we can provide forensic intelligence, the better we can assist you. We feel our investment in rapid DNA will ultimately pay for itself with a return on investment in societal benefit. In just about a year, our instruments have been utilized to identify subjects and classify evidence related to auto theft, homicide, missing persons, and unidentified human remains. You saw in Chris's slides that Missouri is one of the few states that are beginning a program of its kind. And it's going to be very important for us to grow that program. Today's webinar will cover what rapid DNA is, how we are deploying it in Missouri, and how you can access it in our Missouri State Highway Patrol troop locations. As mentioned, our intent is to grow the success of the program. We are a unicorn in this space, and only by growing it will we all be successful. As previously mentioned, we want to provide you with real-time forensic intelligence. Thank you again, and I'll turn it back over to Lauren.
Thank you, Brian. Our next presenter is Adam Ben. Adam Ben is a laboratory manager at the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Laboratory. He began his career at a drug chemist in 2001. He has worked as a drug chemist, a supervisor and technical leader in the drug chemistry discipline, and a laboratory area manager. His background outside the DNA realm gives him a unique perspective on working with a field deployable systems. Adam will be presenting the details of the program and how Missouri local law enforcement can take advantage of the program to expedite criminal investigations. Over to you, Adam.
Good morning. Thank you, Lauren, for the introduction. Once again, my name is Adam Benny with the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Laboratory. I am in Jefferson City, Missouri, which is very centrally located, but the laboratory has locations kind of spread out around the state. We perform different types of analysis at each one of the different laboratory locations. In Jefferson City, Springfield, and Cape Girardeau are the laboratory locations where we perform DNA analysis. The other locations are either evidence drop-off locations or have a limited number of examination types that we perform in those locations. And one of our goals in this rapid program was to have these rapid instruments available throughout the entire state. So why do we have a rapid program in Missouri? The reality is there were some law enforcement leaders around the state who worked with some instrument manufacturers to lobby the legislature to procure the funds for this program. The legislature provided the funds or procured the funds for the program, and those, since it was billed as a investigative leads, it was billed as a program to provide investigative leads. That is very directly related to law enforcement, and as a state law enforcement agency, the Missouri State Highway Patrol was tasked with implementing some kind of program. Within the program, within the Highway Patrol, anything that says DNA usually ends up at the laboratory. And so the instruments and the funding was appropriated to the laboratory, and the laboratory took that program on, and we have tried to make something out of it, something that hopefully will be useful to law enforcement and further the investigations that law enforcement performs on a regular basis. All right, so the purpose of the Rapid DNA program really is there are two prongs to the purpose. The first is for speedy turnaround. As Brian mentioned, we do have some rather lengthy backlogs within our DNA section here at the laboratory. This instrument is able to provide a DNA profile in as little as 90 minutes. And 90 minutes is really fast. The instrument is sort of a laboratory in a box, and it provides the same type of DNA profile that we generate in the laboratory. For an individual sample, it is a very speedy turnaround. In the laboratory, we can batch samples and actually do bulk samples faster. But for the case of these investigative leads, that 90-minute turnaround is a really fast turnaround time. Brian pointed out, literally sometimes over a year wait to get a result for something from the laboratory. And so I hope that you can see that that really truly is a real-time process. And then the other thing is it is for investigative leads. These are either cases that would maybe not come to the laboratory, would not be CODIS eligible in some way. It's set up for investigative leads in real time out in the field. All right, so where are the rapid instruments located? One of our goals was to provide coverage to allow accessibility evenly across the entire state. And many of the programs in the state are divided up by the Highway Patrol troops. And these also allowed for buildings where we had access, and we were also able to control entry to those buildings and security and spread them out around the entire state. So we have instruments currently operational in Lee's Summit at the Troop A headquarters, in Macon at the Troop B headquarters, in Springfield at the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Laboratory location in Springfield, in Cape Girardeau at the Crime Laboratory location in Cape Girardeau, in Jefferson City at the Missouri State Highway Patrol Division of Drug and Crime Control, DDCC headquarters in the annex building of the headquarters compound, and at Troop H in the at St. Joseph at the Troop H headquarters building in St. Joseph, Missouri. We are in the process of putting these instruments in Troop C in Weldon Springs at the troop headquarters building there, in Troop G in Willow Springs at the troop headquarters building there, and the same at Troop I in Rolla at the troop headquarters building there. Those last 3 instruments are expected to be operational by the end of November. So just a quick overview of how the rapid DNA process works. And the first thing that happens is that samples are collected at a scene or processed, are collected whenever evidence is processed by your agency. So our general guidance on this, just very generally, would be that you process the evidence exactly the same way as you always have for any other case previous to rapid DNA. But that if possible, if you would like to run a rapid DNA sample, you take an additional sample for the rapid instrument. Those additional samples can be run on the instrument. There's a photograph of the instrument there. The additional sample can be run on the instrument. And by taking an additional sample to do this, there is no chance of destroying evidence related to the case that could be brought into the laboratory and worked at the laboratory. The instrument generates a profile in as little as 90 minutes, and the profile is, once again, exactly like the profiles that we generate inside the laboratory. And then those profiles are searched against a database called, the program is called Small Pond. The Small Pond database, or the offender database that we currently have in Small Pond, it houses approximately 450,000 individual samples. Those samples are arrestees and offenders that were allowed to be collected or prescribed to be collected by state statute. This sample is, this profile database is not the CODIS database. But it is similar in that it is the offender portion of the CODIS database at the state level. And we are able, because it is a state database, we're able to run a program like this, where CODIS does not allow us to search these samples against CODIS at this point. If there is a match, a hit notification is sent to the agency or to the investigator that has submitted the sample, and it contains any information that we have on the offender or arrestee, including names, date of birth, Missouri identification numbers, race, sex, some other types of identifying information. Anything that we have can be in there or will be included in that. If there is a sample that is run and it comes back as a negative, for instance, it doesn't generate a notification, and you have a suspect, we can check the database manually to determine if the suspect was there. So it would determine if there would have been a hit. If there was no hit and the suspect was not there, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't hit to that suspect. But if the suspect is there and it doesn't generate a hit, then that piece of evidence cannot be tied back to that individual. All right, and then the last thing that we would do is for the first part of this, or as we implement this program here, we want to make sure in the laboratory that we are able to compare back to the rapid instrument. And so those normal samples would be submitted to the laboratory for the traditional laboratory DNA analysis. All right, so how would you, as a law enforcement investigator in the state of Missouri, access the rapid program? So we are in the infant stages of this program, and in reality, you have to be trained in order to operate the instrument and perform the analysis. So we have trained, at this point, we have trained MSHP DDCC investigators in the locations where the instruments have been installed and are operational. And those MSHP DDC investigators have agreed and are available to run samples and coordinate running samples with other law enforcement agencies in those areas. We also have some additional pilot training programs that we have started in a couple of areas around the state. If you need to run a sample, or if you have a case that you are interested in trying to run on the rapid instrument and comparing to the small pond offender database, please contact your local DDCC office, and someone from there can work with you to talk to you about how to take a sample, or they can help take a sample for you and run the sample in the instrument. All right, so if you have any questions, and I know what I went through was very, very quick and very surface level of what we are doing here, or high level of what we're doing here with our rapid program. If you have any specific questions, if you have specific cases that you have questions about, or if you have questions about the program or how you can access the program, or you need contact information for other people around the state to help you out with this program, please absolutely feel free to contact me. I'm available by email at the email address there, or by telephone. That's my office phone, and if I don't get back to you immediately, I'll promise if you leave a message, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Lauren, I think I can turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Our next presenter is Chief Paul Williams, the Police Chief of Springfield, Missouri. Before being appointed as the Springfield Police Chief, Chief Williams had a 29-year career in the Tulsa, Oklahoma Police Department. Chief Williams currently serves on the Missouri Crime Lab Review Committee and is a past president of the Missouri Police Chiefs Association. And you just heard from both Brian and Adam about the details of the Missouri State Highway Patrol Rapid DNA program. And Chief Williams and his department is now going to present the local law enforcement experience with the program and give further insights into its value. Over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Lauren. I am trying to share my screen. Let me know if that's working.
Not seen it yet.
Well, that's why I sent it to you. If you can share that.
Sure. Let me pull it up.
I'll let you work it and click me through it. How's that?
That works. Just give me one sec.
So while she's pulling that up, so as Laura mentioned, yes, I'm chief in Springfield, been here since 2010. Some of my interest in this topic and my bona fides, if you will, I'm a member of the Missouri Crime Lab Review Commission, which meets quarterly, reviews all the operations for all the crime labs around the state, and not just MSHP, but local law enforcement. I also serve on the ICP Forensics Committee, and that is a multidisciplinary group of public and private appointees from around the country. I serve as the police chief representative there. So my interest in forensics and technology and lab work goes back 8 or 9 years. My interest is about making things better for my troops, bringing justice to victims, and seeing how we can improve on that moving forward. So I first saw an example of a rapid DNA at a training conference, and I'll be honest with you, my first thought was CSI has just come to the forefront. I mean, we always tell people we're not like the TV show, but that first presentation when they said you can submit DNA samples from the field and get a result within a couple hours to give you a lead, rather than waiting months or years for a DNA sample to be processed in the lab, I thought was too good to be true. Did research that, and I was so intrigued and enthralled by it that I was trying to secure funding to buy a rapid DNA machine for the Springfield Police Department, and get us at the forefront of moving forward on this concept. You can go to the next screen. At that time, I met with Director Karsten at DPS and shared that thought and that idea. And Director Karsten, to her credit, said, hold on, why, if this is going to be such a good idea, why would we want to do a one-off in one department? Let's see what we can do on this on a statewide level, and maybe work together to bring something like this to Missouri. So as you might imagine, it took a little bit longer than I anticipated to process that through, a couple of years instead of maybe months. But the end result, as you've heard already, is that the state legislature approved funding. DPS was able to secure funding for 6 rapid DNA machines across the state. And as you just heard Adam talking about, going to expand that and put those across the state in the Missouri Crime Lab facilities to allow all law enforcement to have access. That process, just a little history here. I may be repeating myself a little bit from what you heard from Brian and Adam, but since 1991, state statute has required that everybody being arrested for certain felonies or convicted of a felony has to provide a DNA sample. So that's that 450,000 small batch sample that we have. All that DNA information is owned and managed by the Highway Patrol's Crime Lab. And then the rapid DNA, working with the Crime Lab, was developed really with the end user, law enforcement officers, not trained lab personnel, to conduct the testing. So in some ways you can say the DNA process was miniaturized and provides instant processing for officers in the field or investigators assigned to a case. It allows investigators to identify criminals while still in custody in some cases, or equally as important, to uncover or eliminate suspects who aren't in custody. And as you heard Brian describe, that moving something from months to days is absolutely important in the pursuit of justice. So thrilled now that the Highway Patrol Lab has made this technology available to local investigators. You heard Adam mention the pilot testing. So we kicked that off. I volunteered for Springfield to be the first testing site. We went through the training program back earlier this year in the spring, and a number of my investigators have been trained in that. And you're going to hear from Sergeant Jason Copley, who commands my violent crimes unit, about some of his experience on that to date. You go to the next slide, please. I mentioned before that I'm a member of the Forensics Committee. So this infographic was developed by the IACP in conjunction with the FBI to kind of put in a picture form what you heard Adam talk about the difference between rapid DNA and regular DNA testing, lab versus rapid, CODIS, non-CODIS. Be honest with you, as one of the law enforcement representatives on there, sometimes our technical folks can get very technical. And so I'm a visual learner. So this being developed, I think, is good for all of us to tell at a glance what you just heard. So, you can't just take the only piece of DNA evidence and throw it in the rapid machine. That needs to be secondary. You need to collect evidence and submit it to the lab as you normally would. This is an augment, an addition to help us pursue leads and move the investigation forward, and give that quick turnaround. So without walking through all this, I'd say I'd make this infographic. It's available, of course, in the FBI or the ICP. If you want that, I can certainly also make it available after the presentation. But it kind of distills it down for those of us in the field and law enforcement who don't have that forensic background at a glance, what you can do, what you can't do, what you should do, and what you shouldn't do when utilizing the rapid DNA process. You go to the next slide, please. So to distill it down even further, here's my simple 1, 2, 3 on rapid DNA. You use it to secure quick investigative leads, period. It accurately identifies the right suspect, eliminates others, and it makes progress in a case while freeing up resources at the crime lab for that full DNA processing. So in a 1, 2, 3, you secure the DNA sample or a swab. You simply insert it in the machine. You hit go, and it generates the profile. And believe it or not, when they said within 1 or 2 hours, it might be hard to believe. That has absolutely been the case from our experience here in Springfield. 90 minutes or less, you're moving forward with either a yes or a no, which then allows you to pursue additional investigative resources focused in that direction. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Copley, and he is going to give you a couple of examples of how he has utilized the rapid DNA process here since April and some of the results. Jason? Lauren, you can click off my my screen share. I don't think Sergeant Copley has any slides.
Okay, good morning and thank you, Chief. Thanks for the opportunity to be here this morning. Bottom line up front, this is a great resource. I want to speak on how easy the training experience was. It takes maybe 3 to 4 hours for an instructional period, followed by a written test and 3 evaluated submissions of samples. So again, a very easy process as far as getting certified. And then when it comes to the actual submission of these samples, we're talking maybe 5 to 10 minutes max to get the sample submitted. And then within maybe 1.5 to 2 hours, you're getting results by email or by phone, explaining if a sample generated a profile and if that profile matches the database in Small Pond. So specifically, with my experiences, I have tested 5 different samples from different cases since April, and 4 of those 5 samples were blood. 1 of those samples were saliva. Of those 5 samples, 4 of those had generated profiles within the system, and 1 of those was saliva. So again, 3 of those were blood and 1 were saliva that actually generated a profile. Of those 4 profiles that were tested and generated profiles, 2 of those tested positive against profiles within the Small Pond database, giving that detective confirmation that his suspect was on scene during these crimes, which both happened to be vehicle break-ins where the suspect had broken windows, left blood behind, and those were collected by patrol. In regards to the saliva sample, unfortunately did not match any profiles within Small Pond or that database that Small Pond tests against. But due to NIBIN's testing, we've been able to come up with a person of interest from that case. So we look forward to further testing within that investigation. So again, a very simple testing process, very hassle-free, very simple. A very small price to pay for the results of getting this resource and using it to help victims and in the pursuit of justice for these criminals. So that being said, that's all I've got, Lauren.
Thank you, Sergeant. During today's webinar, both the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the Springfield Police Department have presented Missouri's new rapid DNA program and some early successes. We are going to conclude our panel of speakers today with a presentation from the state of Connecticut, which has been operating a similar rapid DNA program since 2001. The highly successful Connecticut Rapid DNA program will provide local law enforcement with a look into the future to show how a mature rapid DNA program can positively impact criminal investigations throughout the state on a daily basis. We are pleased to have Cheryl Carario with us today to present the Connecticut program. Cheryl began her forensic career at the Connecticut Division of Scientific Services in 2007. She is the Deputy Director of the Forensic Biology and DNA Section and the DNA Technical Leader. Cheryl co-developed Connecticut's Rapid DNA program in 2021 for use on crime scene samples. Thanks for joining us, Cheryl. Over to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to get right into it because I do have slides and I know we're on a time limit here. So I'm going to get right into our, hang on, for some reason. Aha, here we go. So Connecticut, We have about 100 people here at the lab. It's full service. It has all different sections, and we do all different types of disciplines here. My director, Dr. Guy Villaro, originally wanted to help agencies get quicker turnaround time. He's always pushed us. We actually had a backlog of 6,000 cases with year turnaround time back in the early 2012, 13. We finally got up to now where we have a 50-day turnaround time and a backlog that we're doing basically real-time cases, but it took a lot of work. He still wanted faster turnaround times to get leads out. So he thought the RAPID program would be a benefit. And so at first I was a little, wary about it because this is, something brand new. But we took it on, we validated it, and we started using it for crime scene samples in 2021. And it has been nothing but a success for us and the law enforcement agencies that we service. It's a tool for officers to use, and then the lab takes over after the samples run. We have 8 kiosks across the state. They're strategically located in different parts so that agencies don't have a long drive. Meriden kind of in the middle. The lab is in Meriden. It's in the middle of the state, but we wanted to put them in areas so officers can quickly drive to a rapid kiosk. We are putting in progress at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. We're going to look at doing homicide, sex assaults immediately because they collect the kit from the body. And so instead of them sending the kit to the lab and getting all that process done, they can easily take an extra swab and throw it in the rapid. And we're going to validate a process that will be able to help us with sex assaults. We also are putting a rapid instrument in a mobile van, and that's in progress. It's being fabricated right now, so that's exciting. Maybe next year we'll have it, and maybe I can come back and talk about the mobile van. But as we go, so you all know basically from all the presentations that have been given today, it's basically collect the crime scene sample, put it in the machine, and it goes to, we have Small Pond as well, and we have a copy of our Connecticut convicted offender database, and that's what it searches. It also searches all the forensic unknown samples in Connecticut database as well. So we can get investigative leads, forensic to forensic hits, if there are. So the processing workflow, very simple. It seems similar to Missouri. The AV swab collection, two swabs at the same time. Make sure it's one sampling. 96 minutes is the exact time for the rapid hit that we have. And we review the profiles as DNA analysts, and we search it in the copy of the Connecticut state database. And so again, 2 swabs are taken. One is to use for rapid, and the other one is used to send to the lab through normal processing. To note that lab testing is 5 to 7-fold more sensitive. It's very sensitive conventionally versus rapid, but rapid still produces very solid, good DNA profiles that can be searched in Small Pond. We also have ProbGen where we can do mixture interpretation, and we have ENDIS and CODIS, and that's really what's going to stand up in court. But these investigative leads are very, very necessary for crimes to get investigated quickly. And that's just the rapid hit versus our genetic analyzers. You have the cartridges, the primary cartridges. They're expensive components to the instrument, but overall, it's really worth it for serving the people of your state. There's results that we see on the rapid. Green is that a full single source profile is generated, and maybe from hearing your presentations, that's the way that you guys it automatically uploads to your Small Pond database. The difference with Connecticut is because we're working with our law enforcement agencies, we do the reach back and do analyze yellow check marks, which a lot of crime scene samples are yellow check marks. And whenever I present to laboratories, I always say that there's the yellow check marks do give full single source profiles. They're just some technical details that the analyst has to remove artifacts and whatnot, not to get too technical. So we got a lot of our leads from the yellow check marks. The value that we found over the course since 2021, you can identify or eliminate a possible suspect. We've had a PD that held a person and the DNA evidence came in rapid. We got a profile. They then ran in rapid the suspects known. I did a direct comparison and he was actually eliminated. So they let him go and continued on their investigation to try to solve the crime. Sometimes profiles don't come out well, but there are times I can at least tell them if it's a male or a female. Sometimes they need to know, our agencies need to know that they did get a DNA profile from this evidence in order to get a search warrant. That's come up. We have done direct comparisons to known samples for unidentified human remains, such as a parentage, someone burned beyond recognition. OCME can't do anything about it. So we get the parents' knowns and we will do a parentage comparison to say that this unidentified person is consistent with being the child of these people. And also if there's yellow check marks that give us a slight mixture, we can potentially compare a known profile to that mixture to try to give out some investigative information. It does help us evidence triage wise for the lab, because when we get rapid hits, we prioritize that sample in our batches that we do in the lab and to get that CODIS hit out as fast as possible. And so it helps us being able to focus on the top 2 or 3 pieces of evidence to do first, and then we get the CODIS hit, we can go back to the other pieces of evidence at a later time, but we want to rush those couple of pieces of evidence that gave us a hit. So we got really successful samples, just looking at the time, blood swabs, seam epithelial cells, skin cells. We've gotten great results, and a lot of these do come up yellow, but we've gotten great results from mouth area of water bottles, cups, cigarette butts, vape pens were awesome, rolled cigarettes. We've done wearer DNA, face masks, baseball caps, clothing, gloves, hats. And sometimes samples surprise us. There are some samples that, we tell the officer, I don't advise that. That's probably going to be very low. Send it all to the lab. And they, my point of view is the evidence is there in their custody at the time that they're running it. The laboratory accepts their A swab, and that's when we have control of it. So if they choose to run the sample on rapid, I can advise them, but I never tell them absolutely not. I do give them the drawbacks and saying, hey, you could possibly, you have 10 swabs on these 2 swabs and you use one for rapid, you have 5 left. And that's not going to really detect much of a profile. But they're allowed to basically do whatever sample they want. They're trained to know what type of sample works, but sometimes I just want to try it. So our program is very successful. We have 1,100 samples run since 2021. Now, mind you, we get about 6,000 to 7,000 cases of DNA for DNA a year. But with rapid, you're looking at specific types of samples where, they're not going to do fingerprint smudges on windows. Those have never worked for our program. But 1,100 total samples run. 30% of all samples run have generated a hit or lead, which is actually matching up to our CODIS hit rate, which is around 30%. 60% of samples that are uploaded. So out of the 1,100, certain samples uploaded because they were good enough to be uploaded. 60% of those samples uploaded generated a lead. So we're putting in samples that we think are single source profiles that can possibly match to a convicted offender or maybe another forensic unknown in the database. I'm just going to jump down. 100 total agencies across Connecticut have been trained. They take a 2.5 hour class in So sorry, I'm back. I don't know what my computer just reset on me. But it's 100 total agencies. Can you guys still hear me? Is everything all set? Someone let me know.
We can hear you, but your slides are not showing.
Okay, hang on a second. I don't know why my computer just completely reset on me. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, good. 100 total agency trained, and about 500 people throughout the state agencies of Connecticut, federal, local, and state police have been trained operators, and it keeps growing as people retire. They send new people in, and we just go with it. Do this. So 36% of the crimes that we process are burglaries. The next is homicides, assaults, robbery, shots fired. There was blood. That's just the offense that was. So those are, burglary, homicides, assaults. Those are the major offenses that we do. We don't have a rule that says you can only do homicides. We did that in the beginning because we were very unsure about the whole thing. But now, since we've gotten used to the program and know how it works, we use whatever you have. You want to run something, we do it. We go through training. It's about 2.5 hours, PowerPoint presentation, review of SOPs and necessary paperwork that they might need to fill out for us. They get a practical doing a cigarette butt. Then they take a very short quiz. And then we observe everybody. We try our best to observe everybody running a sample once a year. We don't get everybody, but we do a good faith effort to get everybody. So our rapid program is outside of our accreditation of the lab. It's completely separate. It's a tool and program for law enforcement agencies, but myself and my co-worker that helped develop this plan with me, Sevi Papakanakis, we do analyze the DNA and we oversee as basically rapid admins for the scientific part of the program. But to get this going in our state, we had to do a lot of groundwork, and we worked closely with our state's attorneys. We made sure that we owned our state data and there's nothing prohibiting us to make a copy of that data and put it in small pond. We made sure we talked to the NDIS heads that it was okay that we owned the data, and it was. We worked with the state attorneys and they're fully on board with it. We've talked to the defense counsel and they didn't have any issues with it. We have the lab has very good relationships with both sides of the table. So I say, we do have an MOU with all the kiosk agencies, and we worked with our legal departments. And two PDs actually bought their own rapid, and that was great. It's fine. It's just that they have to basically participate in our program by following what we train and what we do. So it's, if they want to use our data, they just have to agree to, X, Y, and Z. And again, it's outside of our scope of accreditation. And I know CODIS is doing things to be able to have those samples directly search in CODIS, but right now it's working the way that we have it very well. So I just, I put challenges and solutions. This is just stuff that I found helpful to give to other agencies, regardless of if you're a lab or a PD, to help set up your kiosks, things that we had problems with and how we solve them. So our kiosks are basically, in non-laboratory environments. They're in like interrogation rooms, or they're in, little offices inside the PD. So we buy them. The people that are in our program from the beginning and didn't buy their own kiosk, we supply hoods, biohazards, PPE, gloves, and all that. We ask for them to have security 24/7 into the kiosk for any local police that want to come in and use it at the kiosk. We give out proxy cards for our lab for the agencies to come into our front door lobby, and the kiosk is right outside of that. So they can't get into the main lab. It's just like a little lobby room. We require them to get trained and review the SOPs. Those are the things we had to think about when we were making these kiosks across the state. On the lab side, and this might not apply for you guys, but we did need quality control, performance check paperwork. We do require all our kiosks to have run logs to track the samples that they run. We have case summary forms just to summarize what they're running, so we have all the information when we write up a notification. One thing we did that I recommended highly to labs and in all my presentation is to have some way of identifying what agency is running the sample. So we made up a spreadsheet with all the agencies that may use our kiosk program, and we made agency codes for them. So for instance, New Haven PD is NHPD. And so when they insert their cartridge and they type in their case number, before their case number, they put NHPD dash case number dash item number. And that's very helpful because we know that other police agencies are going to come to these kiosks and run. We do a lot of in-house tracking, samples, results. We do a lot of statistics to keep track of because we want to show that this is a very thorough and well-built program, and we have the stats to support it and the numbers. We also made a general email address that we monitor so that when an agency wants to run a sample, they scan in their case summary form and send it to us, because right now there's no email alert from the instrument that someone's running. So we don't know unless we get in a case summary form and they send it to that rapid email, and the 3 people that Sevi and I, and then one other DNA analyst, we look at that email and are able to figure out who's going to do what with it. So for us, for the lab, and again, this is more slides for lab people if they're on here. I mean, 24/7 reach back analysis. Who's going to do that? Because there have been times that I've logged into my computer at home at 11:30 at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, because it's a homicide and I want to help. Like it's I'm a manager, I don't get overtime, but I want to help the agencies get their lead as fast as possible. So we're thinking about third shift, on-call, remote access. We're still working that out. Right now it's me. I don't mind. My husband's a state trooper, so he gets calls in the middle of the night as well. So our investigative lead notification, we have them put the email addresses on the case summary. That's who we're going to send the notification if there is a lead. We have an Eventbrite QR code, so they don't double book the kiosks. We do update our small pond database with the new convicted offenders once a month. And we maintain control of the security of all the data and offender profiles. And I also tell labs, make sure you have funding available, because it's not cheap. It's well worth it, but it is expensive. So non-technical operators, the officers can choose ones that are questionable. You need to make sure proper training's done, advise the best path forward. In the end, again, it's in their custody, your custody, and you're made aware of the limitations. We make sure that everyone knows aseptic, clean, DNA type, like handling of the evidence, gloves, masks, as much as possible. One very big thing when you're setting up your kiosks is the IT. If you're gonna all connect all over the state and go into one small pond, that's going to be able to search those profiles. The IT portion took forever. And so between the vendor, the lab, the agencies that, their IT people, our IT people, thermo IT people. I mean, I'm not an IT person, but it took a while to figure out all the IP addresses, because we had to do we use the collect line in Connecticut, and it's, complicated. So you have to find out how to connect securely to all the rapid kiosks, so it comes back to our server, and that's what I said. Okay, so rapid program is not a plug and play. Repetition is key for training. Still advising about samples. Lab staff support is critical, I feel, and this is one of the slides I give to other laboratories. We create a rapid response team to make sure that anything maintenance wise, we drive out to the kiosks and do the maintenance. We keep logs of everything. The big thing that we've done, and I'm getting to the end of my slides, but concordance check. So I can tell you from this point forward, every single lead that we gave out to an agency from Rapid DNA within the same day has come out as a CODIS hit from conventional testing. So there is 100% concordance. And I believe that is why this project, this program is so successful, because you're going to get it. You might get it a few weeks later. They get it from between 3 weeks to maybe 6 weeks later than the rapid hit, but it's the same profile, the same hit in CODIS. Okay, it's 12:11. You know, we made stuff. I just put these on here just to show examples of things. This is an older one, but we made flyers and, you know, put them in our evidence receiving. Press releases. We've had some great, you know, press release on Rapid in Connecticut. So the red straw was found, swabbed. Hartford PD swabbed it, did Rapid. And on the same day, police were told that DNA from the straw matched suspect whom Resto knew from a previous narcotics investigation, according to the warrant. So we get little hits in, you know, the newspaper on our Rapid program as well. Farmington police officer got like boxed in by a car and he got compound fractures to both legs. And immediately they brought down some evidence for Rapid. And within a couple of hours, we were able to give them a lead, and we found the suspect for them. He got away on foot, but it allowed them to quickly link a suspect to this crime. And, you know, the poor police officer was recovering in the hospital, but we got it to them quickly. The Farmington police said conducting that kind of test can often take weeks, but in Farmington, officers had access to a speedy new tool, rapid DNA tests. In Waterbury, this was the actual first sample they ran in their kiosk, and they swabbed a stick that I guess they were using to break in. And they actually got a hit off the stick, and that was one of the samples I was really surprised on, that we got the hit from a stick, you know, implying touch DNA, and it worked. So that's why, you know, I say I'm not going to make a decision. It's going to be, you know, I'll advise you. New Haven, you know, multiple burglary rings. We got hits to the convicted offenders. Another New Haven press release. And that's about all I have. I mean, I know there's going to be questions later. Feel free, but I am always available to help. I really enjoy helping make the Rapid programs strong in any state. We've been through the ringer with things. I've testified on it 2 times so far. Some of my operators that are law enforcement, you know, I'm not just saying, the ones I trained have testified on it, and everything went smoothly. And with that, I am done. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone, Missouri agencies, for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you to all of our presenters. We now have some time for questions. And our first one, this question is for Adam. Can you explain more details about how we can pursue getting your training so we are certified to use the device?
So I think the first thing would be to contact me directly, probably give me a call, and we could talk about how that process would work. I know that's not super helpful, but at this point, really the only way that we have to coordinate anything like that is through direct contact with me.
Okay, perhaps Chris, you could answer this one. Have any rapid DNA results been used in prosecution, and how has it been presented?
Well, that's a great question. They have. They've been used in California, and they've been used in Pennsylvania. But what usually happens is that once a rapid hit is identified, then the kind of traditional confirmatory tests are done as well. So the need to use the quote unquote rapid hit itself is less likely because you're gonna likely do confirmatory tests before that. Remember, and obviously the database hit, it's just a lead like any other hit that needs to be followed up on. So it becomes part of your overall evidence scheme, not just they don't prosecute on rapid hits alone.
Okay, this one is for Brian and Adam. Will any county crime labs be participating in this program in the near future?
Not directly in our program. The county crime labs are some of them are starting up their own programs. We have offered our assistance to our county and city partners. We have offered the same thing we're talking about here for their officers to come to our facilities to use the instruments. I know of a couple counties, St. Charles being one of them, that is planning on starting up a program for their officers, and I'm not entirely read in on how that might work. And Jefferson County is in the process of building their own lab, and my understanding is their DNA laboratory within that lab is going to be reliant heavily on rapid DNA. But those programs will not directly be associated with ours at this point.
Thanks, Brian. A follow-up to the prosecution question. Cheryl, what court action is there so far in Connecticut?
There's been two. So what happened was the trained officer testified, said that, yeah, I got trained. This is basically what I did. And then they pulled me in to explain the technical stuff. And it went fine. No issues. I mean, I basically can say that it's the same type of testing done at the forensic lab. They did get the same result from the conventional testing, and they just wanted to know what it was, and is this something crazy new? And that was it. It went very smoothly. No issue on the officer's end, and no issue on my end.
Okay, this one for Brian or Adam again. Can I submit a suspect swab at the same time as the evidence swab?
So currently we don't have our database set up that way. What we're looking for really initially here is to have those matches against the small pond offender database. But if you submit that suspect swab along with the traditional samples to the laboratory, then we would work those through the traditional methods.
Okay, another one for Chris. Do you think the federal government will grow or shrink federal law enforcement grants in the future, and will funding for rapid DNA expand?
Oh boy, is that a loaded question. So I think in general, it's a political question, and will depend a bit on how the election goes, and whether or not DOJ grants in general are shrunk. So one of the things that happens at DOJ is that when DOJ in general gets a big cut in funding, the first thing to go is the grant funding programs, right? That's where they begin to shave the money off first. So if there is a significant cut to DOJ, then that would definitely affect the grant programs. However, that being said, of those that are supported, the DNA-based programs really are some of the most bipartisanly supported. So I think of the pain that could be inflicted in terms of an overall cut in grant funding that DNA would likely survive a bit better than some of the other programs that are out there.
Thanks, Chris. Another one for Brian or Adam. Do you see a future where the program could expand to have local law enforcement agencies have their own rapid DNA system that connects to the Missouri Highway Patrol program? Would the Highway Patrol support this and provide reach back services?
That's an excellent question, and the short answer is yes, we do see that, but not anytime soon. The problem with providing the reach back service is that we have limited staff, and as I mentioned a moment ago, you know we we put it out into our troop locations, and our crime laboratory already has a significant backlog. So we really don't have the personnel to be doing reach back for virtually any more than the 9 locations we're going to have the rapid DNA in right now. Now, as things change, as the program grows, and as we get some success, it'll be a lot easier for us to request funding for more rapid DNA instruments, and request funding for more personnel to support it. But at this particular time, we don't really have the personnel that could support the instruments being in any other locations besides ours. Additionally, beyond that, when we're talking about putting instruments in buildings that we do not, for lack of a better term, control, there are logistical arguments with having our equipment in somebody else's building and then having us actually service the equipment, doing reach back, etc. There probably would have to be some memorandum of agreement or something to that nature that could get into an area that I'm not particularly adept at. But all of that said, right now, to me, everything's on the table, and we really want to try to grow the program. So as the program grows, as we gain success, we want to capitalize on those gains and consolidate those gains, and do what we can to ensure the future success of the program. So that is not off the table, but probably we're not going to see that for several years down the road.
Thanks, Brian. This one is for Chief Williams. What role could the Missouri State Police Associations play in training or promoting the use for rapid DNA?
Good question. And, we've been involved in that from the beginning about getting this program up and running. And I think as an avenue to do 2 things: 1, educate, spread information about the program, and then 2, work with Highway Patrol on providing that training across the state. I think it's something absolutely we can be a part of. I'll also include the Missouri Sheriff's Association in those discussions moving forward. So we'll get with Brian and Adam and see how we can help facilitate offering training around the state, rather than, as Adam said, just him being the sole point of contact.
Thanks, Chief. Another one for Brian or Adam. What cases or offenses are eligible for submission to the Missouri Highway Patrol?
Right now, we're looking at just about anything. Our own work in-house really parallels what Cheryl was talking about. In-house and in our hands, the rapid DNA instruments are producing their best results with blood. So any type of blood at a scene, as Sergeant Copley talked about, broken window, blood on the glass, those are going to be your greatest chance for success. However, as I mentioned, and I think Sergeant Copley also mentioned, we had some saliva off of a straw that provided a profile and match. And Cheryl also talked about successes. In this world, we don't know what is going to work and what's not. We have really good ideas of the types of evidence that will work, but we often see surprises as well. So we don't want to restrict officers I really want to echo how Cheryl put it. We don't want to restrict officers and tell them, what to do or what not to do, but we want them to portend caution when they're doing these things. And if they feel, based on the training that we give them, that they might have one shot, then the best chance that they would have is to send it in for traditional DNA. And one of the best things you can do at that point would be, if you're uncertain, just call us and ask us. If you're seeing something at a crime scene and you're wondering, should I submit this to Rapid or should I just go ahead and submit it for traditional? Just give us a call and we'll walk you through it.
Thanks, Brian. Our last question will go to Sergeant Copley. Can anyone get certified to operate the Rapid DNA machine? If so, what is the benefit of that, or is it a requirement in order to use the device?
So yes, any sworn officer can be certified and trained in the instrument, which is required to operate the device. If you're not trained in it, you definitely are not going to be operating the device with the under the permission of the Highway Patrol.
Thank you, Sergeant. And that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you again to all of our presenters and everyone who joined us today. We hope you find this information valuable as you consider utilizing the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Rapid DNA program and how it can expedite your investigations. For more information about the Missouri Rapid DNA program, please reach out to Brian Hoey or Adam Benny. I will send a follow-up email later today, which will include their information. We also encourage you to visit www.gorapiddna.com, where you can find additional Rapid DNA policy and program information and updates. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.